The mixed messages coming out of this White House are growing every single day. We've been told that we've won this war. We're going to be out of there in a couple of weeks. The streets are just going to open back up. Prices are going to come tumbling back down. This is done. Yet, at the same time, this White House is asking Congress for more money for defense than it has ever seen, and wants to pay for it by slashing domestic programs. Trump asks Congress to supersize military budget, slash domestic programs. President Donald Trump called Friday for Congress to back a $1.5 trillion defense budget alongside yawning reductions to domestic programs, making official the ambitious military increase he's been teasing for months. In a slate of budget fact sheets ahead of an expected broader rollout of the president's fiscal blueprint, the White House detailed a military budget hike of more than 40% for the fiscal year that begins in October. The Trump administration is formally proposing Republicans in Congress enact a large chunk of that defense cash, some $350 billion, using the party line reconciliation process to skirt the Senate filibuster and forego bipartisan negotiations. Republican leaders on Capitol Hill are starting to embrace the concept of sidelining Democrats to boost Pentagon dollars and immigration enforcement accounts currently unfunded amid the broader Department of Homeland Security shutdown. But Trump will struggle to build enough political will on his side of the aisle to fulfill his defense goals as fiscal conservatives demand commensurate spending cuts after grudgingly backing the multi-trillion-dollar tax and spending package Republicans enacted along party lines last summer. While calling for a historic increase in the military's budget, the White House is also seeking a 10% cut to non-defense spending, with a proposed reduction of $73 billion from federal programs outside the military. Major targets of the administration's proposed spending reductions are environmental programs across many federal agencies, including nixing $15 billion in grants for efforts such as renewable energy technology and $4 billion in transportation funds for programs supporting infrastructure to charge electric vehicles. The administration is recommending that Congress eliminate $1.6 billion in research programs run by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and asking lawmakers to find $45 million in savings by slashing the Interior Department's renewable energy programs. The White House wants another $642 million in cuts to, quote, woke and wasteful international financial institutions within the Treasury Department budget. The blueprint, prepared by the White House budget chief Russ Vought, proposes the elimination of current fair housing initiatives at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, as well as the Community Development Financial Institutions Fund that awards funding to community banks and other financial institutions that lend to communities traditionally underserved by the banking industry. It also calls for Congress to zero out funding for the Commerce Department agency that promotes minority-owned businesses and the National Endowment for Democracy, which promotes freedom in countries with authoritarian regimes that threaten U.S. interests. For the second year in a row, Trump's fiscal framework arrives months late and is not expected to include all of the data lawmakers rely on to rewrite funding bills for the upcoming fiscal year. Last year, Republican lawmakers were still pressing Vought, for those details well into the summer. So, this administration wants to spend $1.5 trillion on defense next year and cut all kinds of domestic social programs, which is kind of odd considering this is what his Secretary of State had to say about Iran just this week.
And at the end of the day, I think that if there are people in Iran who now, given everything that's happened, are willing to move in a different direction for their country, that would be great. Imagine in Iran that instead of spending their wealth, billions of dollars supporting terrorists or weapons, had spent that money helping the people of Iran, you'd have a much different country.
Imagine if Iran had not built its bombs with its billions of dollars and helped its people, we'd have a much different country. No shit, champ. Imagine if we did that here. Instead of increasing the defense budget by 40%, a defense budget that many economic experts say we can take a 40% hatchet to before we even get into each individual department within the Department of Defense to start carving away the fat with a scalpel. They want to add 40% to it. We've never spent over $1 trillion a year on defense yet. They want $1.5 trillion next year at the expense of all those domestic programs. Folks, if you don't think your vote matters, believe me, it does. You got to vote the Democrats in the midterm. Otherwise, this shit is going to become a reality. Tom, this is going to be voted on before the midterms. Maybe. Maybe not. Never know. But we can change it. We can fix it, but only if we get control.